Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, covering all things pro wrestling. As always, live from No Sales Studios, I'm the ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro. And joined on this amazing Monday with the one bad Chad himself. What's going on, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. It's a good weekend. We had the Nasty Boys shout out the Turnbuckle Tavern. What better than having one of the nastiest, craziest tag teams give us a shout out? That was cool. We got Fastlane to talk about. We got a bunch of rumors with Punk. He's back in our news cycle. Come on, guys. Thought we were moving on from this. And we got a little war brewing on Tuesday. So it's a fun time to be a fan, as always.
Tuesday Night War, Mayor of Pity City. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, but
Yeah.
Goddamn, wrestling's been fun to talk about. And the other thing is, make sure you guys check out all the other shows we're doing here on the Tavern, whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, any of your audio platforms, RSS feed as the technical people talk about,
Yeah.
but it's all a good thing. And also check out the Pod Foundation. Everyone's cranking out some great stuff as we approach, which is spooky season, man. It's getting chilly over here in the Northeast, and I'm really enjoying it. Getting some horror movies in. And I know you guys are the experts at Broken VCR if you want to hype that up at the end of the show or now.
Yeah, man. Spooktober's here, full swing. We're big fans, big supporters of the movement, of the season. Check out Broken VCR. We'll get all the plugs in at the end, but like Ace said, if you want to support the Tavern, the best way to do it, just go to theturnbuckletavern.com, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all your RSS feeds, as the kids say. We got you on lock. We got wrestling around the clock. So much stuff, man. So check it out. Give us some love. And the big thing, the two biggest things, I think, you leave us a review that helps us with those, algorithms, and tell a friend. Word of mouth helps, man. The old school way, the grassroots way. Give us some word of mouth, some DIY, do it yourself. Go out, tell your buddies, let them know we exist. The Nasty Boys know we exist. Come on, guys, give us some love.
All right, well, let's take a step out of Pity City. Let's get into big story number one, talk about what's going on Tuesday night.
Big stories. Story 1.
We got a war brewing on Tuesday night. Next week's NXT is set to go head-to-head with AEW Dynamite, which was moved to Tuesday due to the MLB coverage of the divisional round of the playoffs. But man, we have two cards to break down. We have all the nuance of it. We have fans going at it on Twitter, on Instagram, any sort of social media platform. Feels like the fans are more heated than most of the talent on either side. That's usually the case. I'm sure it would have been the case back on the Monday Night Wars. But before we break down Dynamite, before we break down Tuesday night NXT, before we break down really all the ammunition that NXT is bringing to their front door,
Yeah.
Your initial thought on is this good for wrestling to have two wrestling shows go head to head on Tuesday night?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we're talking about it. It's good. Well, I mean, I say it's good, but it is things like this that continue to drive that tribalistic nature of fan bases. They feel like they have to pick a side. They've got to cheer for their home team, whoever that may be. And I'm guilty of it too. I'll be tuned into Tuesday to Title Tuesday on AEW all the way. I'm cheering for the underdog as always. Yeah, it's good though, man, to have wrestling be so healthy that you've got two shows on one night. I mean, how can I hate on it when we grew up and cut our teeth as fans on it in the Monday Night Wars? That's what really, 96 to 99. Let's forget about those last 2 years in WCW. But dude, it was firing on all cylinders and fans were chomping at the bit for it. So I think this is good. It's a one-off. It's fun. It's not like we're getting this every week. So kind of rally behind the war and see what they got to do. See what they're bringing to the table. Cause the cards are set, but like any card, there's going to be those little nuances in between that they're not announcing, those wild cards they're going to pull out of their sleeve. So I'm excited to sit down and watch what they bring to the table.
So again, we'll preview the cards in full, but the one thing I have to say is NXT has gotten better week after week. They have been almost destination TV, and that's been relying on a lot of the main roster kind of stuff going on. But you can see the fruits of their labor with the younger talent too. They're creating some new stars. There's more roster ready, whatever that means to anybody. Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, Dragunov. These guys feel like they're going to be stars on the main roster, and it felt like we were void of that for the last couple of years of NXT. The thing that does bother me, and we'll talk about them stacking their card up, I think as is, NXT had a shot at competing on Tuesday night, making it a very close competition. And then we can make our predictions. I think NXT on USA is going to blow AEW Dynamite out of the water because there's two reasons. Obviously, they're stacking up the card with a lot of talent, Hall of Fame talent, which we'll preview.
Yeah.
And also, that's its normal spot. There's going to be the lapse in AEW Dynamite fans that are going to tune in Wednesday. They're not going to remember that someone said it was Title Tuesday. They may watch on demand, but you have the benefit of always being there. But the thing that kind of bothers me about it is like NXT as is, without bringing in potentially The Undertaker, John Cena, Asuka. They have a really good roster that deserves to be showcased. Like, take your best that you have in-house. Why do you have to bring reinforcements? It's almost like the high school team is calling up the varsity to bring down. Like, you guys were good enough to compete with us anyway. So, I don't know, it kind of takes a little of the steam out of it for me because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the line because if NXT doesn't win and they brought Cody Rhodes and Asuka and John Cena, there's a lot of conversation that you can't be like, well, it's developmental. Like, they kind of put the pressure on themselves where they could lean on that. Hey, it's our third brand by distant third. So I don't know your thoughts on that.
They've put themselves in a spot where AEW has nothing to lose now. Like you said, AEW was already moving nights. So you're at a disadvantage when it's not your night you're defending. You're moving to someone else's night. And say what you want, people hating on NXT when the brand change first happened from black and gold to this new vibe they've got. A lot of fans were critical. I think HBK has shown that he's really turned that product around. I think they've got a lot of talented people there. They're, like you said, they're building a more focused pipeline to the main roster now, where what you're seeing on NXT seems to be what you're going to see on the main roster. Whereas Black and Gold, when they went up there, they could repackage them in total, and you weren't getting what you got in NXT. So now they're doing a better job. And to speak to what you were saying, Ace, it's like there's going to be an asterisk to this win. Because if you're bringing in, and we'll dig deep into what they're bringing to the table, but when you're bringing John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Paul Heyman, possibly The Undertaker, Asuka, when you're bringing all these people down to your C-level show, you should win, dude. It's their night, and you're loading it with main roster talent. Like, what do you think's gonna happen? And it's kind of sad in a way to me because I'm like, you've built NXT to a point where do you not have faith in your guys? Do you just you do not want to run the risk of AEW possibly competing on your night? Because they whipped your fucking ass on Wednesday nights for a long time before you moved off of that night. And now you've got to bring down. We're not talking your mid-card guys. They're not bringing Chad Gable down. They're bringing their quote unquote GOAT, John Cena. They're bringing the Phenom, Undertaker. They're bringing the Golden Boy, Cody Rhodes. Do you not have faith in your Braun Breakers and your Carmelo Hayes and your Dragunovs? Because I got to be honest, for me, like, I believe in that young talent. Dragunov, I mean, he's one of the best champions right now. Carmelo Hayes, butter him up. He's ready to be baked on the main roster. I mean, that guy is ready. Trick Williams, I think he's been showing that he's right there in the mix too. So it's like you've got a roster that I think could have, especially being their night, they could have easily competed for that ratings win. But now you're loading it up, and it I'll say this. You don't think WWE looks at AEW as competition? I'm not saying AEW's more popular than WWE. That would be the most idiotic statement I could say. Obviously, WWE is the industry leader, the trendsetter. Where they go, the industry goes. But look what they're doing to this show. They're loading all of this talent because they want to ensure a ratings victory. And because AEW does have something. They have something. They have something that Stamford deems as competition, as a true alternative. So look at the cards and it'll show you. So for all those people, it's like, oh, you're Outlaw Mud Show, all of this bullshit that always gets thrown on All Elite Wrestling. I think this proves what they think of this company. They've got to stack the deck, load it up to compete. What do you think, Ace? What do you think about them bringing all of these guys down to compete?
I think you said it perfectly. I think it robs the opportunity of the young talent and the culture they're bringing down to NXT on their own night. They have home field advantage. They're supposed to be there. And we're seeing them have an upward trend. They went head to head with Collision with No Mercy. And of course, that's apples and oranges with a PLE versus, a network TV show. But if you want to compare just their ratings itself, we saw NXT draw up post No Mercy, one of their highest ratings. And yes, you could say Dom was there, Rhea's there. That type of stuff is like from the main roster. But Tuesday's episode of NXT averaged 857,000, which is up from 636,000 the week before. They're up in demos. They're up in all different categories. They're trending in the right direction. I would have liked to see them give the opportunity to a stack card, because we see stack cards on a weekly basis. We preview them here. We talk about all the young talent. They put strap matches on TV. They put title matches on TV. They put women's wrestling in the forefront. They have opportunities to showcase what they're able to do, especially since all the eyes are on NXT and AEW right now. And I think they wanted to trounce AEW to rob them of any chance of pulling up an upset on their night. And it's talking out of both sides of your mouth, because we have those clips of Triple H talking about how it's developmental. It was never a competition. They don't look at them as apples and apples. And it is certainly, this is another tally in the box that AEW is looked at as legitimate. Maybe the word's not competition, but a legitimate obstacle for eyes that they believe are taking eyes from WWE. It's no longer this secondary competition brand. This is something that is looked upon as legitimate, and this proves it. So we know they're going to get I think it's foregone conclusion. Tuesday night, I think they already had a really good shot of winning anyway, especially with the way the Dynamite ratings have been sort of trending in different directions. People are certainly watching other things. We have sports in the fall that are changing. We're going to see it even go further with basketball coming back in a few short weeks. Hockey, not that drives ratings in North America, but that also takes some eyes away. But they're going head to head with both of these guys are going head to head with the MLB playoffs. Let's not take that away as well. Like, they're going to get millions of views as well that might potentially watch AEW NXT live. It will be interesting, but it took a lot of the steam away. The fact that you loaded this all-star team up and took the Monstars and put them against the Looney Tunes. And, it's kind of crazy that they had to do that, because I think that's more of the commentary that they felt they needed to do that.
Yeah.
When they are making so much progress, and it's an entertaining show. Tuesday nights, I've been tuning in every Tuesday night, and
NXT's better than the main roster. Let's be honest. It's back for me. It's back to being the show to watch from a pure bell to bell standpoint. I think they're telling more story across their entire roster down there too. Like, what is it? Do you think? I think this is going to happen. That quote, because you were talking about they changed the narrative. Triple H is always saying, "Oh, we're not competing. That's developmental." He also had a statement that he said when they were getting their asses trounced, and he released that congratulations memo to AEW for beating them in the ratings. He dropped that little line where he said, "It's a marathon, not a sprint." I feel like that phrase is going to bubble back up into some sort of press release where they're like, "See, we told you it was a marathon." It's coming back. They've set it up. And I think they are smart and they are right. And if anything, WWE takes their time on things. A lot of times they'll just slowly build things up. But I have a feeling Trips is going to be bringing that marathon sprint line back into the fold when they win Tuesday. Because I'll be honest, man, if AEW wins this ratings battle on Tuesday night, I'll be shocked.
Same.
I'm not expecting any way they win this. So if they do win, like you said at the top of this segment, all the pressure is on WWE. you've front loaded your card so much with main roster talent that if AEW even comes within sniffing distance of beating you, that's a win for AEW. We went up against John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Undertaker. Come on, man. I mean, it's theirs to lose. AEW is just kind of doing their thing. There's nothing they're not on their night. They're good to go.
So let's preview AEW quick. We'll go through the card. We have an AEW Women's World Championship match, Saraya defending against Shida. You have an AEW International Championship match, Rey Fenix defends against Jon Moxley. A TNT Championship No More Contenders match, Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. Then we get the grudge match between Jay White and Hangman Page. We get Adam Copeland's debut in AEW in-ring action versus Luchasaurus. Chris Jericho versus Powerhouse Hobbs. And we're going to have Christian Cage and Adam Copeland for a third time in a ring together. Last night, we saw them on Collision. Wednesday night, we saw them together in the ring with all the pomp and circumstances, a lot of electricity in the ring with them. Taking out the Tuesday piece of this, all the ratings aside, this Dynamite looks really stacked. And I love where they're going with all these directions, because we have a lot of different stories that are sprouting out of really the main story of MJF Adam Cole, but there's also these other subplots that are continue to be driven all across the board. And the championships feel like they mean something.
Yep.
Potentially a program with Swerve getting a championship match and Jon Moxley going to right the ship, probably take the international championship back where he probably shouldn't have lost at a Grand Slam due to the injury. And then not to mention, we're going to get Jay White versus Hangman Page, which is going to be an awesome match. A former world champion taking on a guy who has potential. He's holding the title by stolen property, but really, really good card. And I'm glad that they didn't pull out some, I don't know what they could have done. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what they could have done to do the ridiculousness on the other side of being like, I don't know, stack it up with WCW legends, like get Ricky Steamboat and Sting and all those guys to get out there and make a subset of your show that isn't driving your consistent story. Because let's not forget, on NXT, you are foregoing weekly story that people are tuning in for talent that is not usually there. And there's some damage from that. I don't think it's going to be substantial, but there's something to be said about, you're not driving your consistent storytelling from week to week.
You took the words right out of my mouth. The big difference in these two lineups, when you look at them, is Dynamite is just sticking to the stories they're telling. And yeah, I'll say it again. I've been beating this drum because I'm so sick of the narrative that there's no stories in AEW. Dude, there are more stories in AEW right now. It changes. If you would ask me 6 months ago, WWE had them by a mile. But right now, AEW, blow by blow, from the top of the card to the bottom, there is tons of story. When you have Santana and Ortiz feuding and it's on your low card, they have stories top to bottom, and this card is a complete example of that. I mean, the fact that we're getting some pretty phenomenal matches too. Jay White, Hangman Page. Are you kidding me? Jay White's getting the title shot at Full Gear against MJF. Hangman's coming off of that loss to Swerve, which was arguably match of the night at Wrestle Dream. You've even got Powerhouse Hobbs, who is now, they're strapping a rocket to this dude. He has found himself in the middle of this Don Callis storyline, one of the most compelling storylines in all Elite Wrestling, and he's taking on Jericho. Powerhouse Hobbs, man, they're shining this guy up nice. And of course, Christian Cage and Adam Copeland are going to have a segment together, which is going to be fireworks. The last week's was incredible. And when I look at, and we get Jon Moxley, essentially, I mean, if I'm a betting man, I say they're resetting the storyline, and Moxley's going to take this title back off of Phoenix, and we're going to keep rolling with Mox as international champion. There's so much good stuff going on right now in AEW TV. And I know in the group chat, Ace, you said Rampage is good again. It is, dude. It might not be, the Dynamite lineups, but Rampage, there's story being built there. Like, if you're a viewer and you're keeping up with all three of the shows, dude, every show gives you something. Collision's been killing it. The ratings don't reflect it, but fuck the ratings, man. Good wrestling. We should all just enjoy good storytelling in our wrestling. And this is the big narrative going into Tuesday Night War that you so eloquently put is AEW is sticking with what got them to the dance. They're just continuing their week-to-week storytelling, where NXT is foregoing some of that. I'm sure there's going to be some on the broadcast, but they are giving away time to main roster people coming in, popping in, saying hello. And I guess there's a tactic to that where you could say, well, they're going to bring people down who watch the main roster, and maybe when they come for Cena and they come for Cody Rhodes, maybe they'll see Trick Williams, maybe they'll see Dragunov and be like, hey, I want to stick around and keep watching. So I get the kind of.
So why not do it on another week then? You know
exactly. Exactly. So we'll see, but I love how Dynamite's just kind of keeping with what they do, and NXT feels like they have to load up talent from the big boys.
Yeah, put the blinders on and continue your storytelling. And the other thing is, you referenced before booking for the casual fan, and there's nothing that infuriates me more, because if you're booking for these nearsighted one-off numbers, eventually there's damage to the fan base. They expect it week after week. And if you're booking NXT like that, and again, this is a one-off thing, maybe they can justify it in the ways that we're just talking about it, that it will start to bridge the gap from the casual fans, the Raw and SmackDown loyalists, to come over to NXT and watch on Tuesday night because they see Taker there, because they see Cena. But that's not something that will be consistent. That is a mentality that is damaging to wrestling at large. Like, I think everyone that is expecting to be booking towards, and I say it week after week, we are diehards, we're in the weeds. A lot of our mentality gets skewed because we are sitting here dissecting the blow by blow on cards like GCW, MLW, NWA. Like, we're in it.
Yeah.
But if you take your booking and emphasize, like if AEW just looked at their booking and said, we want to attract more casual fans, that's what people say they should. Like we saw last week, 800,000 people was their lowest rating since May. Am I panicking about it? Absolutely not, because the ratings don't reflect, as you said, the product on the screen for me. As long as their networks are happy that they're still in negotiations, that they're still going to get the money to keep them on TV, all it is bragging rights for the corporate suits in a boardroom.
Yeah.
I don't understand why fans are driving towards that. Why can't you just be happy towards, like, if for me, when I'm watching AEW, did I enjoy it? Did I not? And the fact that did 800,000 or did 1.5 million doesn't have any sort of sway on me. It is conversation. It's conversation about what's the trend. But the question I have for you is, we saw their lowest rating since May. We just referenced it. 800,000 people, whatever the reason might be, might have been competition, MLB playout, whatever. But we also see on social media, which the Nielsen ratings are dead. They are antiquated. They're absolutely something that needs to be moved on from. We saw 4.5 million views for Edge's debut on YouTube, and also countless other views across Instagram, all the other
TikTok,
platforms.
all of that shit.
What are your thoughts of how do you measure that? Because 4.5 million and 800,000, that means there's eyes on your product. I think the younger generation consumes things, not just entertainment at large. Sports, it gets viewed in a different way than we're used to. We're sitting in front of a TV, butt on a couch. They are viewing it on their phone. How do you quantify that? And do you see it as being more of an outlier, this 800,000, or is the 4.5 million more of an outlier?
I think that it's a completely different age. I mean, and if you just want to go by the Nielsen rating, right? Like if you just want to go by this antiquated, outdated way of looking at who consumes pro wrestling, if you're just looking at that, we can see that every company, WWE included, has taken a hit in the last decade. You know, we come from a time when they were pulling 4, 5, 6 million. Could you imagine a rating for Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision that's pulling 4 million viewers? It would be insane. And it's not because people stopped watching wrestling. I don't buy that narrative at all. People are consuming it differently. Cable cutting is through the roof. I don't know hardly anyone outside of my parents who are in their 60s who still have basic cable, a cable package. Nobody I know has it. And I'm sure that I'm not, rare in that regard. I feel like a lot of people cut the cord. I think that plays into it. like you said, I think this time of the year is just hard on anyone because you've got MLB playoffs, you've got hockey, you've got football killing it. I mean, football is the number one thing in America when it comes to ratings during this time of the year. You have, when you want to speak to, just last Dynamite, dude, they had TBS, the listings, the DVR listings were screwed up. Tony Khan's having to come out, an hour prior to the show and be like, hey, the listings are wrong on your TV provider. It's not going to record. I think a lot of people look, because in our group chat, full disclosure, Hawk sends a text. It's like, hey man, it says that whatever that show is,
Young Sheldon, I believe.
Yeah, Young Sheldon. It's like, he said Young Sheldon's playing 8 to 10. And we're like, that's a screw up. Dynamite's on. So he wasn't waiting to see. He just pulled up his guide and it told him it wasn't on. I'm sure there's a lot of people
didn't have us, you know what I mean? They don't have wrestling fans in a group chat. They're like, guess it's not on. I'm not going to watch it.
So there's a lot of little things that adds to that antiquated Nielsen rating. But to get to your point of the 4 million views on YouTube and all the countless Instagram videos, got to be honest, for me, there's a lot of times, life is busy. You don't get to sit down in front of your TV when Raw is on, SmackDown, NWA, MLW, Impact. I don't have time to consume all of this. We pick and choose what we watch live in front of our TV when it's on, but I stay up on everything. And you know how I do that? Social media, YouTube. It is in a way now where if you're following Impact's Instagram account, and you want to just stay up on the storylines and the big moments, you can miss an episode and just scroll their Instagram and kind of fill in the threads. Now, you're not getting the beauty of seeing the bell to bell and all of that, but you're able to not miss out. You can stay in the loop, in the know. So I think social media, there is a ton of people out there that consider themselves hardcore fans that are in the know, and they're not watching at 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock on Monday night. They're just kind of tracking the YouTube videos, because it's crazy to think back in the day, they never would be releasing clips like that. You would have to watch TV, but the business model has changed so much that if you're watching AEW Dynamite, if you're watching Raw, SmackDown, as soon as a segment ends, literally within 5-10 minutes, that video is live on their Instagram channel. It's live on their YouTube. So they're just wanting the content out there because they know the viewing habits of their viewers. And I feel like, when are we going to update the way we rate shows, especially live sporting events and live sports entertainment, pro wrestling? When are we going to update that and truly reflect how people are consuming this product? Because I think so. If there was some sort of way you could really investigate who is truly watching what, where, I think we would be shocked at the amount of fans that are truly following all of these products strictly through social media.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, honestly, it is one of those things where I think if you sit, and it'd be amazing to pick the brain of a TV executive of how they view the ratings. And I understand the Nielsen ratings are baked into negotiations. You have to have those numbers up. So I understand you're catering towards that old mentality, but don't think that AEW, WWE, any other TV show is not sitting behind the scenes, understanding their metrics on social media and understanding their reach, because you even see it on Instagram with our posts. You could see the reach of where they go and what's popular, what's not. And we're at a bare minimum wrestling Instagram. So imagine what the tools are at the fingertips of all these other big time TV deals that millions of dollars are on the line.
Let me say something real quick, Ace. Sure. Just a little insider thing. Okay, my shoot job, I'm a mailman. I deliver mail. These Nielsen ratings families, these guys, these people that have the boxes in their house that you're dictated to, it's a microcosm. They're not really scanning every house. There's Nielsen families, and by the people that have the Nielsen box is how they kind of parse out the Nielsen rating. So it's not a true rating. And I'll just say, I don't see a lot of these Nielsen family things, but the houses I do deliver these Nielsen ratings letters to, kind of questionable. I don't I don't see many like young spry wrestling fans getting these Nielsen ratings things. So I'd be interested to see, like I've tried in the past to find out, how do I become a Nielsen family. I want to be a part of these ratings, because we think that when we tune in that we're getting counted. We're not getting counted. The only
Right.
people that are getting counted are the people who have the Nielsen box. So that's just something to think about, because for the longest time when I heard Nielsen rating, I literally thought they were tapping, they could see what every TV. I mean, I was an idiot for thinking that, but I thought they were truly tapping everyone, but they're not.
But in 2023, we don't have technology like that where they can actually see
Exactly.
a digitized version. Like we can see views on YouTube. You can see view. How do you not see the amount of views on any given show that's airing at any given time? And not to, not to get on this whole rabbit hole of it, but we're now watching wrestling in a time where at any given time they're competing against every year in wrestling ever, because it's available on a digital platform. They're competing with every movie on demand. They're competing with TV shows on demand. Like it is an absolute different landscape. And over time, we are seeing the groundswell move towards, let's stop assessing them with an antiquated system. It's using something that's no longer fit. It's trying to fit a different shape into it. Like we're not looking at AEW the right way. We're not looking at NXT or WWE the right way. The fact that WWE is still getting 1.5, close to 2 million people for Fox on top of their social media, I think the emphasis should be put on their reach elsewhere, not just the standard cable. The reach that we're seeing is 6 million people clicking on a video of Roman Reigns on SmackDown. That to me holds more weight.
100%.
Just as the 4.5 million people for Adam Copeland's debut in less than a day watching his debut. That means someone unique viewers are watching it. That has more weight to me than a Nielsen rating saying like, oh, well, I guess Edge didn't have a big impact. No, that remains to be seen. Edge's impact is going to be
social media. We're in the social media age. I feel like if you look at how businesses, how individuals, how everyone uses these platforms in their life to stay up on news, to stay up on everything, there needs to be much more emphasis on those numbers, because I feel like those are very, very compelling compared to the Nielsen ratings. I never really buy into them. There's so many things at play, but yeah, I think it's an antiquated way, and social media, it needs to get a little more respect when it comes to these numbers. And I think here's the thing, man, when you hear WBD coming out and saying they're happy with Dynamite numbers, but meanwhile on social media, everyone's it's like a house fire, because everyone's like, oh, it's the lowest rating. The reason they're happy is these people make billions of dollars. They are not stupid. If they see the interaction on social media, that's playing into these TV deals too. I just have to say, because it's driving people to your channel, and it's all about that sponsorship money. And so I think if you don't think the USA Networks, the Foxes, the WBDs, TBS, TNT, all of those, if you don't think they're looking at the numbers outside of just the Nielsen ratings, you're insane. Everything's in play here. Everything, even in like the entertainment business, my friends kind of working within that area, like, dude, you can get jobs just within Hollywood. A big thing is your follower base. Like, they're looking at your social media. How many people are you getting out to? And that's just for, walk-on actors in TV shows. All of that stuff plays into this big system of media we have now.
So for NXT is going to feature appearances for some of the biggest main roster stars, and they also teased the appearances referenced before with The Undertaker. After SmackDown, a commercial for NXT was airing. At the very end, you heard Undertaker's gong. So this is paired with a PW Insider report on Friday that Undertaker would be at the WWE Performance Center next week, including on Tuesday when NXT holds their weekly TV. So you can add him to the list of names like John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Paul Heyman, the Brawling Brutes, and Asuka. So last time we saw Undertaker, we saw him obviously on Raw 30 with the American Badass gimmick, and he was anointing Bray Wyatt and also confronting LA Knight. But we also have, we mentioned John Cena. Braun Breaker is going to face Carmelo Hayes next week, and it's a complete separate conversation. Like, is Braun Breaker's been done? Like, can we get him up to the main roster? What are we doing? Like,
I know, man.
The guy's so ready for the main roster, but whatever. That's a different conversation. On Tuesday's show, Hayes revealed that he had gotten a phone call from John Cena during the show, and announced that Cena will be in his corner for the match next week. And the show ended with Paul Heyman appearing, not happy that Hayes is getting advice from Cena, and declared he's going to be in Braun's corner. So they made it make sense here, but we're seeing John Cena on Tuesday night. And then also we have Cody Rhodes making a special appearance and a special announcement. This is where the house gets a little bit loaded here. And they have Asuka facing Roxanne Perez. And then, as we referenced before, the beat goes on. And the Brawl.
Dude, it would be one thing if they just had Cody or if they just had Cena, but they are stacking the deck. I want to know, what do you think this Undertaker appearance is going to be? How do they utilize him? Because just for me, if you're using him, you got to use him in a way that's going to give somebody a rub on the roster. The only person on that roster that I feel like that could benefit from some sort of Undertaker rub, throw Joe Gacy in with a segment with him. Like, I love Joe Gacy's work. He was always getting the Bray Wyatt comparisons. Joe Gacy, let him get a little bit of that respect and that handshake from Undertaker, maybe.
Yeah, I can see something like that. But my guess is he's going to come out and cut a commercial for something. Like, he's going to come out in the gear.
The worst.
He's going to be like, drink your Ovaltine, like something like that. So
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that's part of it. And then Cody's major announcement. Curious what that may or may not be. Has me intrigued. So I imagine that a lot of the other fans that are not typical Tuesday night viewers has them intrigued. But I'm going to be following both. I'm going to be DVRing NXT, and I'll also be watching it. So there's also those fans that are watching both. I'm watching AEW live. I feel like, again, they're not straying away from their stories on a consistent basis. I'm more intrigued with Adam Copeland's debut. Swerve versus Bryan Danielson on free TV. Like, that blows everything on NXT out of the water. I don't care. Superstars, legends be damned. I'd rather see that match on TV.
Yeah. Swerve and Danielson, just come on. When I saw that match announcement on Dynamite last week, you guys know, if you listen to anything I'm on, you know how high I've been on Swerve. I've been beating the Swerve drum since he was with Keith Lee. I'm like, break this team up and send him to the singles. And he's killing it, man. I love the way they're handling him and putting him in these big spots. I think he's really a face of the future. Talk about a guy that I feel like NXT dropped the ball on when they had him. Swerve is great. And yeah, it's going to be, I'm much more intrigued by the storylines going on Dynamite right now than, trotting out all of the roster guys. And this Cody announcement, you got to think, did they ever announce who the free agent was that SmackDown gets? Because weren't they due a free agent? Is it going to be Cody saying he's SmackDown now? Because, not to bury the lead on our next big story, but dude's a tag team champion now. So,
right.
So maybe that plays into this. I feel like this announcement is just going to be some veiled attempt of catch me Friday night on, it's going to be
Drink
some sort of pitch. Yeah. A pitch to come to the main roster show.
Exactly. And, this is not to take away from what NXT is doing on Tuesday night. This is a one-off. This is them flexing their muscles with the bigger mothership hanging over them. They have the ability to pull people down. But I wish they wouldn't, man, because I think everything they're doing it's been so great. And they have a legitimate chance they did 866,000 people from the week before. They easily could have beat Dynamite, especially on a different night, but we'll never actually know.
There's a debate.
They loaded the deck.
Yeah, there's a debate to be had of what would help NXT more long-term. Would it be foregoing main roster talent coming down for a show like this and just pounding your week-to-week storylines with the roster that built you to where you're at? Or the argument of bringing down main roster will help because it'll bring eyes that maybe aren't watching and they'll stick around. I think there's a debate there because I can see both sides, but I tend to lean on go with who brought you here. And these guys deserve this spotlight. And like you said at the top of the segment, I truly think like there's a possibility it's their night. There's a possibility they could have won this without any of the help. This talent, trust in this young talent, man. They've been killing it.
Yeah. And I just think you said it great. I don't think that having them down there helps as much as everyone thinks, because it's a one-off. If you think people are sticking around when Taker's not there, that weren't going to watch because like they're tuning in because Taker's there, that means they're not sticking around anyway.
Right.
The WWE audience understands, even though they may be enamored with the talent that's on the roster, that's not going to be enough to keep them. And you're loading the deck for whatever reason because you feel insecure or whatever it is.
Yep.
to make yourself guaranteed a win. Like you said, having an even competition on Tuesday night, they already had the advantage. They're on the, they have the higher ground, being that it is their night. And they have been doing a great job of consistent storytelling year after year. For the last 2 years, it's been getting progressively better. So if they would have just played with an even deck and like, all right, let's go to war. And like, even if it was close, have the scruples to say that, AEW, we competed with their main roster. Like they have a lot more at stake here now, as we said before, if they lose. And there's no chance they lose this rating, but
absolutely
they created this hole for themselves.
Right. They like you said, they have the higher ground. They are at the top of the hill in the castle, and the Raiders are charging up the hill. They are at a disadvantage. They've got their archers on the towers shooting arrows. They are locked and loaded, man. You do not need to I guess they're pulling out the trebuchets with Undertaker and all these guys. They just want to decimate AEW and make a statement.
Yeah, and if they don't do over 1 million people, I think they're competing against themselves now. If you brought all these guys out, now there's a certain number in my mind you have to hit, and that wasn't the case prior to them being advertised. But let's get to Fastlane and then the fall off from there. And big story number 2.
Big story 2.
All right, so we have the fallout from Fastlane last night on Saturday. If you guys checked it out, it was a quick 5-match, easy to consume card. Starting in the pre-show, Jade Cargill did make her first appearance as a member of the WWE roster. She showed up in a backstage segment with Triple H in a car. Some of the story here, and I guess we can kind of combine them, Chad, just about what Triple H said about Jade Cargill when she'll debut and all the stuff like that. So first, before we get to Triple H's comments, which are pretty telling and pretty awesome, what are your thoughts about debuting Jade Cargill in a backstage segment, especially where some of the same fans in the same breath would be critical of AEW putting someone on a stage or doing a backstage segment? What are your thoughts on this? Is this emphasizing her biggest star power, or is this more of, I don't know, they missed an opportunity to have her debut in a big Impact way?
Could you imagine if AEW trotted out Tiffany Stratton on and Tiffany Stratton, maybe she's not on Jade Cargill's level. I'm just trying to pick a young up-and-coming big talent in WWE. Could you imagine AEW trotting out Tiffany Stratton on 0 Hour for a pay-per-view? Sure. Fans would lose their minds. Like they would be like, what are you doing? I get the slow burn aspect of what they're trying to do, but goddamn, man, whatever happened to a big, shocking debut? Like a big, like we don't see it coming. I mean, they are telegraphing this. Yeah, we don't know how she's going to come out. We don't know. They're hitting her hard in the PC. They're wanting to get her up to snuff because let's be honest, it's not like she's Charlotte Flair in the bell to bell, but there's something to be said about a good old fashioned big time surprise. At least they did it with Cody. I know Cody's more seasoned and he's there. He's not as I don't like using the word green because I think Jade Cargill is talented, but like, man, it just takes me back to, and I think I've heard a lot of fans kind of disgruntled about this. I think Chick Foley was talking about, it's like, man, whatever happened to the surprises? Like, could you imagine the Women's Rumble, number 1, number 30, wherever, number 17, wherever she wants to pop out, Jade Cargill comes out and we've seen nothing, heard nothing. I would rather her just disappear. She just got signed, disappear for 4 or 5 months, and then boom, Rumble, here she is. I get they're really wanting to slow burn her, and they're not wanting people to forget that they got her. I think this is just all of them. These little things like this, her being on the social media, her getting the shout out on Raw, and her live tweeting during Raw, and then her popping up in a Fastlane pre-show. This is all just ways of WWE, I think, saying, hey, don't remember, we stole her from AEW. She's coming. She's coming. Don't forget about her, because Jade was kind of forgotten in AEW, to be honest. In the week-to-week TV, before she came back and had that little blow-off with Chris Statlander, she was pretty forgotten. That's why I love Jade, big supporter of her. I wish her the best. I hope she becomes the top person in WWE. She has the it factor above all else. But I don't feel the loss in AEW with her. Yeah, if they would have handled her right, she would have been the biggest star in that company, but they didn't. She wasn't on week to week, so I don't miss her. I mean, it's just the fact of it. But yeah, to your original question, come on, man. Give us a surprise. You could easily shoot an angle and wrap the story around where she could come out and make a true shocking impact on one of your big shows, and then still yet protect her where she can still be, buffing out the edges and sharpening the blade at the PC. So I hate when they do this shit, man. It's like when they trotted out CM Punk on their Fox post show. Like I get he's not a part of the main roster, and he was just doing the new stuff with Renee and Christian and all those guys, Saraya and all those. But it felt like everyone was like, Punk's back. And I'm like, really? After 7 years, he comes back on a Fox post show? Like,
Right.
I don't know. Stuff like this, it just leaves a lot to be desired for me. Could you imagine in 1995 if Lex Luger came out on a Nitro post show? No, he's got to come out at the end of the episode, first episode of Nitro. He walks out, fans shit their pants. That I miss those days, and I know it's a different time, but man, I wish Jade would have came out and attacked someone or do something. Just this, like, she's in the back and Triple H shakes her hand, and let's be honest, Jade looked like $1 million. I mean,
She looked great.
She's great, but I didn't like this. I want something bigger than just this kind of, you're piecemealing it out with her. You're giving us breadcrumbs. You're reminding us she's here, but I would rather forget about her, and then my reminder is some shocking debut. That's just where I'm at with it.
So Triple H emphasized what you said before, patience, and he said in the Fastlane post-media scrum, saying when she's ready to blow the roof off of everything we do right, there's one thing I am, it's patient for stuff like this. He continued, her ability and her rise has been incredibly quick. This is a different system. This is a different level of everything. What doesn't exist elsewhere exists here. That opportunity for her to learn at a different level and get to a different place. That's just the way it is. He continues, she's ready for it all. She's ready to dig in. She's ready to work her ass off. But the thing you don't want to do, you don't want to put somebody in a position they're not sort of ready for. You want to make sure they're damn ready for it. No matter what happens, she's going to knock it out of the park. When is that? Not sure. When is she going to go? Not sure. What a future. I look forward to strapping the rocket to her.
And
so
I agree. I agree with a lot of what he said there. I agree. You want to make sure she's ready. 100%, dude. You don't want her to go out there and look green against a Bailey.
But then hold her out. Hold her out in, like you said, the PC. Let her work in the shadows and not have to come out. And then you debut her in the Rumble. That's a lot of time from now until January. Have her ready. The work rate minimum for the WWE main roster is much lower. And the fact that she was on AEW TV for a long period of time, I know he said it's a different place and it's a different level of everything, but there's more pressure on her. And damn it, damn if anyone disagrees with me. There is more pressure on her work rate wise to be in an AEW ring than a WWE ring. She's already ready for a WWE ring. I think there's other things where the hard cam is, the other stuff outside, the PR stuff. Maybe that's a little bit different and how they do things. But as far as work rate goes, she's already there. I mean, if you look at some of the main roster women, she's already close to where they're at.
And you don't have to book her into these like 20-minute barn burners with Charlotte or Bailey, or Becky or any. It just cracks me up because in that statement from the media scrum, Triple H says there is one thing I am, and it's patient for stuff like this. Really? You don't seem patient to me when you feel the need to trot her out on a pre-show of a mediocre pay-per-view. I'm not saying the card itself was mediocre. I'm just saying Fastlane doesn't give me vibes of Rumble, SummerSlam, Mania. That's what's shocking. It would be different if this was a Mania pre-show, a Royal Rumble pre-show. This was your pre-show to Fastlane, dude. And this is where we're getting our first kind of eyeballs on Jade Cargill. You're not that patient. You're worried people are going to forget that you got her. That's why you felt the need to bring her out. Like you said, Ace, if tuck her away and let her do. If you feel like she needs to get ready in whatever way you feel she has to, tuck her away, let her get ready, then bring her out. We don't have to see her on the pre-show of Fastlane.
So like I said before, we had a 5-match, quick, very bite-sized card. Let's start with the Tag Team Championship match. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso defeated the Judgment Day, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest to become the new undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. So match was fun. Have no complaints about the match. I did not expect a title change, but we're seeing more story here. JD McDonough accidentally nailed Damian Priest with the briefcase. Obviously, it set up some implications that we didn't see come to fruition later in the night. Felt like Damian Priest was destined to cash in. They took any steam out of that with the Rhea Ripley segment prior to the main event saying, not tonight. We'll talk about Rhea in a second. Rhea is gaining a lot more power in the WWE canon because she's becoming equal or at least close to where Roman Reigns is at as far as gravitational pull. But the one thing, and I was texting with my friend who doesn't watch WWE consistently, he actually texted me and said, didn't they bring Jey Uso to Raw to make him a singles guy? And I said, yeah, that's correct. And he said, well, why did he win the tag team championship? And I didn't have an answer for him. I understand you're progressing the story maybe towards Survivor Series, a War Games match with both sides of the fence. We had that awesome ending to SmackDown on Friday where you had all the star power in the ring. Awesome ending. The fact that Jey Uso went over to Raw, became a single star, literally on a shirt, main event Jey, and he became a tag team champion after breaking up with one of the greatest tag teams in WWE history. It's the most WWE booking I've ever seen in my life.
100%.
For Jey Uso to be walking away with these tag titles. Like it's not like he's the IC champion beating Gunther.
No.
It's not like he went out there and won a different championship. He could be the guy holding the North American championship that Dom holds. But no, he will hold the tag team titles. And this is the most WWE style booking ever. They had no plans for Jey Uso outside of, all right, let's throw him in a mixed tag and a mixed bag max, which with Cody Rhodes for the tag titles. It's crazy to me.
WWE going to WWE, man. Let's be honest though, these tag titles haven't meant fuck all since the Usos lost them. I mean, the Usos, at least they had validity to the reign, and I think this division's a joke. Out of anything in WWE, and I know I'm critical of them sometimes, but their tag division is a joke. You can tell their tag division is designed to build singles people. I just do not think they ever see any long-term tag situations. It hasn't been good since the Attitude Era, as far as like really premier tag division, late 90s, early 2000s. And I love the Usos. They're great, but just competition and depth of division, it just hasn't been great. I think this is unfortunate for Jey. I was hoping he was going to move into singles competition, but I think this is all a step in the Bloodline storyline. It's putting an Uso with Cody. It's with story moving. What's going to happen when Roman comes back? His interactions with Jey now that he's aligned with a guy who is coming after Roman's title. And that's fine for the story. Like that's a piece in this bigger story, but that's a complete example of how they look at the tag division. Instead of giving the tag division a meaningful storyline itself, it's literally just a thread in a single storyline. That's how I look at it. These titles, it was a good match. I mean, both of these guys are super talented, and it's definitely a good story thread for Judgment Day and dissension and all of that. But I just don't see why you have to put these titles. Poor Jey Uso can't get out of this division.
Yeah. I think a big piece to this storyline, and I'm very interested, we'll talk about it in the quick hitters about this Judgment Day and potential bloodline merger that they're teasing. There's a lot of meat on the bone there, but this, as you said, is a barometer of where the tag division's at. The fact that you feel the need to put it on two quote unquote main eventers, guys that are not a typical tag team. When you have tag teams that are both in NXT and also on the main roster that take these titles away and let the Viking Raiders wrestle for them, or like find a different way to get them away. There's a way to create dissension between Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, and Roman Reigns in the bloodline without the tag titles being victimized. I think that's a problem with the booking is these titles become props. They wind up just hanging on the shoulders of guys for stories that don't revolve around the tag titles. They become, and you mentioned before, Sammy and Kevin holding titles, and they were a victim of being injured and banged up after WrestleMania. They weren't on TV as consistently. They couldn't work as consistently. But once they were on Judgment Day, it felt like they were building towards something like, okay, cool, we're going to have a little bit of story being told with Balor and Damian Priest, but I don't know, they pulled the plug on, and now we have Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. That could change Monday.
But let's be honest, like even Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, to me, they're singles guys.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree.
Like, where's your tag division at? And please, for the love of God, fans, quit wishing away tag teams from AEW, wanting them to sign with WWE. Why would you do that to those guys? Do you want to see FTR in this division? Would you want to see the Young Bucks in this division? They would disappear. I am more confident with tag teams staying in AEW than any other division. When I look at Ricky Starks, when I look at Wardlow, even though Ricky just won the tag titles, but when I look at all of these people that people are like, oh, they're going to leave, they're going to go to WWE, I think there's a lot of validity to that. But when people are like, yeah, this Lucha Brothers are going to sign with WWE or FTR or Young Bucks, I'm like, I don't know if there's a lot of bait for a tag team to go over to WWE the way they handle this division.
So we also had the LWO, Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar were advertising a mystery partner. They're, of course, accompanied by Zelina Vega, defeating Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. So they started the match 2-on-3, and it was establishing Lashley and the Street Profits as absolutely just a major force throughout the division. They've been on and off with this booking of Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. It has a very large amount of potential, but they haven't been featured on TV in a big way. I think a lot of the emphasis has been, as you mentioned before, on the Bloodline, Judgment Day, where Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits have these small segments of time on the TV show to build up the momentum. But all of that went out the door when Carlito was the guy who came in, and he completely first of all, got a great pop, similar to the pop he got in Puerto Rico, not as large, but people were excited to see him. And he completely wiped out everything that was going on in the match and was the star. And Carlito, he was signed a long time ago. He backed out of the House of Glory booking that he did. Or I think he did it. And there was another booking he backed out of. It was announced that he had signed with WWE. They put him on ice, had no plans for him. And then this is the time that he's here. They're going to throw him in the LWO, which I understand they're moving merch to the LWO, Rey Mysterio. I think the time is now to turn Santos Escobar heel. I see a lot of Andrade in him. I see a lot of potential in him, potentially a main eventer. They're always looking for that flair for a main eventer like a Santos Escobar. Andrade's promo held him back. I don't think Santos Escobar's promo holds him back. I think he's the full package, and the fact that he's wrapped up in a trio right now, or whatever tag team faction that he's a lesser than, with Rey being the leader, I think Santos Escobar has a lot of potential, and they should pull the trigger soon to have another main eventer where they threw it all on Alberto Del Rio back in the day because they wanted a guy to capture that demographic. Santos Escobar is that guy, and I feel like he could be, and right now he's being a little bit wasted for me.
Yeah, definitely being wasted. I love Santos Escobar. When he was in NXT, he was one of my favorite people to watch. Dude is legit. He comes from, I get Andrade vibes a lot, like just that main event Mexican wrestler who could crush it with the guys if given the opportunity. I love seeing Carlito come back. It took him a while to find something for him to do. I'd heard a report a couple months ago where they're just waiting waiting for something for him. And
but he's doing the LWO thing, the same thing he did when he came in on a one-off. Why
right,
wouldn't you
it's
just
like,
throw him in
what
the
were you
faction?
waiting for? What were you waiting for? Just bring him out. The one thing I like LWO. I think they're killing it. But man, the way they're booking this Lashley Profits thing, it feels a lot of start-stop. It feels like they don't know what they want to do. It feels like they're in a holding pattern for something. I don't know if we're getting another member and they're kind of waiting and biding their time, because when this first started and you had Lashley kind of popping up on these shows and we saw him talking to different individuals, we saw him talk to the Street Profits. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we saw him talk to Carmelo Hayes at one point.
Yep.
So it's like, when I saw that happening, it put in my mind, oh, this is awesome, because they're building a new faction. Kind of, the Bloodline set the template, and then we saw them follow the booking style with the Judgment Day. And I thought Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits were kind of, what was it? Are they loosely called street business? I don't know.
I think they call it. I mean, Corey Graves has been calling it street business, but not sure if that's exactly what they're called. But
so I thought they were building them to that. I thought Carmelo Hayes would have already been in here. I mean, honestly, dude, you have Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, you throw Carmelo Hayes in there, and then Jade Cargill as their female, dude, give it to me, inject it into my veins. But the way they've been booking this, it's just like losses, and they're playing up on this. Street Profits have to prove themselves to Bobby Lashley. I feel like they're not all in yet. I feel like they're not really believing in this yet. And I hope they believe in it, because I think you could do a lot of cool stuff with this. I know you don't always have to break up tag teams, but if you want to throw a great little angle, you're priming yourself up with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Could you imagine Montez Ford kicking out Angelo Dawkins and doing a super heel turn? You've instantly created almost like a Rock, Farouk type of situation in the nation, where Montez could use this faction to come up into the main event single scene. I love the idea of it. I love the package of all of them together. I just think they're not hitting it for me right now with it.
So we also had John Cena teaming with LA Knight, taking on the Bloodline, Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa, of course, with Paul Heyman. My notes from this is it's trippy to see John Cena competing in a 2023 ring, but it's also obvious how over LA Knight is. And obviously the structure of the match was Tag Team 101. It was setting up the hot tag, building up suspense, and the hot tag to LA Knight was the right move. And Cena really playing the underdog here, selling throughout the whole match. It was definitely interesting, because usually, as a fan, been watching wrestling for a long time, John Cena is usually on the other end of it, getting the hot tag, making the save, being Superman. And the fact that, LA Knight was the guy getting the victory was definitely interesting to me. And this was more of a rub to me than just patting him on the shoulder on the top of the ramp and holding his hand up. Right now they have Lightning in a battle with LA Knight. And I think they are waiting and biding time for it. Unsure what the payoff is, because top of the mountain is Roman Reigns' story being told there. I don't think, as over and organic as he is, the story doesn't fit for me. And I think long-term, you have to find a way to pay off this organic energy and make it make sense and make LA Knight capitalize on it to take that next step. Because even though he's over, even though he's getting the reaction, he hasn't been able to take that next step booking-wise. It's more complicated than ever, because in a time and a landscape in the past, we would have had the opportunity to just be like, win the Rumble, win the title.
Right.
Makes sense. But there's too much at stake with this, 3.5 year reign from Roman Reigns, that we're sitting here saying he's not that guy. And I don't think that's damnation on his character or his rise up the card. It just speaks to how fragile that story has been. And I think we want to make sure that he's more of a future main eventer rather than being another cautionary tale like a Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy was injury. LA Knight as obviously might be momentum based, because we know how quickly the system moves in WWE. They are on you. They love you. But as soon as WWE gets their claws in you to show, do the things that they are seeing grow organically, they make everything sterile and all that. I'm fearful watching this.
Yeah, me too. I think John Cena, I haven't been very high on the way they've used him since he returned. but the way they used him here with LA Knight, like you said, he's giving the hot tag to LA. They're shining LA Knight up, especially he's in a match against members of the Bloodline. I think they're telegraphing a little bit that, LA is a potential opponent for Roman in the future. I think it worries me a little bit that he's already attached to the Bloodline, because I feel like they're not building him to be the guy to beat Roman. It feels more to me like they're building him to be the guy that Roman beats on his way to losing the title. Like I feel like Cody or The Rock. Rock's not going to beat him for the title, but you got Cody and the rumors of The Rock kind of circling Roman. I don't think LA Knight's going to jump that line. So it feels like they're kind of like how they used to do with Hogan. They would shine up a heel, get him hot, and then feed him to the Hulkamania machine. I feel like we're shining up a main eventer and getting ready to feed him to the tribal chief. So I like LA Knight. I think there's something there. And it's a good problem to have. I mean, you've got Cody that Roman could go with. You've got the potential of The Rock. You've got LA Knight kind of coming up hot. You've even got the unification match with Seth Rollins in play if you'd ever want to pull the trigger on that. So there's a lot of pieces that Roman can play with whenever he decides to come back and wrestle.
So before that match, we had Pat McAfee making an appearance prior to the start of it. He cut a promo. He introduced Cena, and he went on commentary, but he was also talking about how Indianapolis deserves a WrestleMania. Didn't mention that they had WrestleMania 8 at the Hoosier Dome, but they deserve a Mania, and maybe they do. Maybe at Lucas Oil, I think that's what it's still called, where the Colts play for the shoe. Maybe they deserve another WrestleMania, but feels like everywhere they go, they're like planting seeds. Like, all right, maybe they're trying to raise the price of these negotiation fees.
They're wanting bidding wars. That's what they're wanting.
So Indianapolis would be a cool city for WrestleMania, but get in line, dude. There's a whole bunch of them, and I think London takes precedent over Indianapolis. But
yeah, there's a lot of it's like the Olympics, man. Everybody's throwing their bids in to see who gets Mania. It's exciting. I find it funny that Cena comes out, cuts this big passionate promo in London, trying to ramp the fans up to get interested for a Mania over there after All In breaks these records at Wembley. And now you've got Pat coming out to trump for Indianapolis. I mean, I love Indy, man. Hawks Indy boy. I've went to shows there. I've obviously been in Hawks land of Indiana, but Indianapolis is a far cry from London. Let's be honest.
So we also had the WWE Women's Championship match. Io Sky defeated Asuka and Charlotte in a triple threat match to retain her championship. Pull away from this match, Io Sky is one of the best performers, male or female, on the roster right now, and seeing her get a pinfall victory over one of the greatest champions in WWE history, pretty awesome to see. Seems like she's on the cusp. I know her reign has been a little bit understated to the point where people forget she was even champion. I do love this, and more emphasis on women's wrestling, please. And the match itself, like, they're good at these PLE matches where they can showcase the women on these big stages, relative to big stage because it's FASTLANE, but they have a difficult time showcasing this type of match on their weekly TV show. And I think that's really the problem. That's what I was thinking about while I'm watching this. I was like, why can't they do this weekly where you don't have to have these crazy star-laden matches with the three of these stars, but why can't you have these awesome segments of time where Io's having great matches just as we watched here?
Yeah, I'm with you. It goes back to the WWE model, though. They want you to not pay, but they want you to sign up for the subscription service to get those big matches where they really lay it on the line. Weekly TV, yeah, you'll get a killer Gunther Gable match. You'll get a killer match. They'll throw you a bone every now and then, but for the most part, it's pretty paint by numbers wrestling week to week on their TV. Io Sky, I love that she won. A lot of people were picking Charlotte Flair because she's the easy pick in a title match on a PLE. But Io Sky, there's not a lot of heat. They're not putting enough heat behind her, man. Like, you can have these good PLE matches and it's awesome, but the major companies, excuse me, the major companies of WWE and AEW, they've got a real problem with week to week storytelling with the women's division. Like, you can get a killer match on a big event, but they don't put an emphasis on the character building and the storytelling of these feuds on their weekly television. Like, Io Sky wins, and that's cool. I'm happy for her because she's one of the best, but I don't care like I should. You know what I mean? Like, I want to care more. If they built this up with good segments, backstage angles, promos, all the way in the lead up, then there's money on the line. I feel like it matters. A lot of times with the women's division in AEW and WWE, it just feels like your token title match. Like, oh, we have to have this title defendant. Let's put them in a match. But there's no real stakes behind it outside of the title itself. I don't attach emotion to it. So I wish the big companies, and you notice I'm saying the big companies because if you look at Impact Wrestling, which you and Colton beautifully break down every Thursday after Impact TV, they do a great job of building women's wrestling top to bottom, from the low card, mid card, high card. There's stories being told. AEW and WWE is suffering in their storytelling when it comes to the women.
Absolutely agree with that. And I think you guys can watch Impact as the blueprint of what you can do to make your women shine on a wrestling show. And I understand they have less stakes because they only have the Access TV to worry about. There's a different landscape they're playing with, but there's a way to transcend that. And, not to go on a tangent, but we watch Japanese wrestling and the women's landscape of All Japan back in the mid 80s. They were the hottest thing in wrestling, one of the best products in wrestling. There's a way to capture it and bring it over here to the United States and continue that rise. But
yeah, I heard you waxing poetic about Dave Meltzer falling in love with it on Shot of Nostalgia.
It was fantastic to read because you could feel the passion, and it's also very poetic because of Terry Funk's love for the same type of wrestling. And he would come back from his tour in Japan where he'd be in tow with watching with all these 2,800 people in an 1,800 arena watching women's wrestling and telling all the roster where he was at, whether it be an NWA or eventually WWF, telling people you need to check out All Japan Women. And they would laugh at him. And I think it was a precursor to where the future was going with wrestling. I think Terry Funk was seeing in different shapes and colors than anyone was able to do.
Absolutely. Terry was ahead of the wave, man. He knew. And that's why so many people respected Terry outside of just his in-ring work, is because he was tapped into what was going on. And guys, if you want to, I think a lot of American fans, they look at Japanese wrestling as this kind of enigma of a thing that they don't really know what it's all about. They think they know peripherally from afar. You want to see hard hitting, brutal wrestling, go watch 80s All Japan women's wrestling and early 90s. They were beating the ever loving hell out of one another over there. Those girls laid shit on the line. And I wish there was a little more of that in our big promotions in America. I wish they gave us some of that hard hitting action and gave us some of that story.
Yeah, and Nagayo's still around. She still works in Japan and, helping with Stardom at times and other women's promotions. Maybe a promotion should bring her in. She knows what it's like to compete at the highest level where
absolutely
maybe AEW or WWE can bring in the fold and just talk about what it's like to get an electric reaction any given night. Like the Beatles were in town. Like people don't understand that it was a constant hum. I think Meltzer was talking about it, how it was like game 7 of the NBA finals and your team is down by 2. And that's what it was like the whole time. And I think that type of environment is infectious. Does it translate on TV? A lot of times, probably not. But I think if it can be captured in the arena, getting people to want to come through the door, you could find a way to capture people's imagination over, TV or whatever, social media. I think there's a piece of that missing from whether it be emphasis, whether it be time, whether it be just trust.
Yeah,
that's missing. And I think you have to bring in some of the ladies from the past that have done it at the highest level. And Nagayo is one of those ladies that has done it higher than a lot of different places. WrestleMania platform be damned.
I feel like fans like us, cut from our cloth of what we grew up watching, whether it was WWE, WCW, or both, I feel like our early entry into Japanese women's wrestling, at least for me, was Bull Nakano.
Right.
Like, that was the one. Oh, wow, what a character. But go check it out, guys. You're missing out. You can pull up those playlists on YouTube and just let it
hell,
ride.
there's a 5-star Meltzer playlist. There's an All Japan Women's playlist where you can watch, the ladies go out there and crush it. Like I was saying before, seeing a Nagayo match, but that doesn't stop you there. Go and watch all the other ladies going out there and doing stuff. It washes over us now because we watch on AEW television. People hit poison ranas and superplexes, but you have to keep in context of what was happening on the other side of the TV.
It's
the
very
moves they were doing
similar.
was insane.
Exactly. It's ahead of the curve. It's before its time. It's very similar to watching 97, 98 WCW Cruiserweight division, where you're like, now you watch it, you're like, oh, we see this a lot. But at the time,
100%,
we were not seeing stuff like that. It's the same thing with All Japan Women's Wrestling. They were pushing the limits well before a lot of people were.
Yeah, long live the Crush Gals, and Lioness Asuka and Nagayo were absolutely just ahead of their time. And I think they are, like I said, Nagayo should be brought in as someone to pick their mind. Come on, let's do it. But we have our main event here. Seth freaking Rollins defeated Shinsuke Nakamura to retain the World Heavyweight Championship in a last man standing match. Notes from this match: Nakamura looked like himself. This is one of the best versions of himself that we've had. This heel version, the assassin version of him, even using the mist at some point in this match. But the other thing I pulled away is a negative. If they didn't pull the trigger on Nakamura, win the title here, they are never going to do this. This guy will never be a world champion on the WWE roster because this was the opportunity.
Yes.
Rollins went crashing through the announce table, and then you felt it being built up to it, and then he hit the Kinshasa through a table. Thought it was over. At the very least, if Rollins is going to retain, I thought Damian Priest was going to cash in. None of that happened. Seth Rollins just retained, and that was it. And I think that's it for Shinsuke Nakamura. How do you come back from losing a last man standing match to Seth Rollins?
They got to have something in plan for Seth. I feel like there's something that we don't see maybe because like you said, man, Nakamura, that moment where he's standing up on top of the ladder and Seth is just laid out through the table below. That's a heel world champion making moment right there for me. I thought I love Nakamura in this way, the assassin. I think this is the type of Nakamura I've been wanting to see for a long, long time. But I don't know, man. It's like I get keeping the title in Rollins. It feels right to have him have a reign. I don't know if dropping it to Nakamura is what you want to do long term. But I don't know what they have planned for Seth. So this decision of not putting it on Nakamura is really I'm going to have to see if it was the right move or not, just judging by where Seth goes from here. Now, if Seth goes into some epic program with Gunther or something like that, then okay, maybe I understand why you didn't make that decision. But if he drops this to Damian Priest in some crazy cash in, I'm like, man, you should have gave it to Nakamura, so I'm waiting and seeing how this kind of unfolds with Nakamura not picking up this win. Cause this was a great match. It was a good main event.
Definitely better than the last outing. And the other thing is, if at anything, right or wrong, it was definitive that it feels like Shinsuke, the time has passed. This is outside of winning the Rumble and going to main event against AJ Styles. This is the most consistent he's been booked on the top of the roster, and it's hard to ever predict. Losing a last man standing match certainly feels like the end of a program. But the other thing I want to pass your way, and I'm sure you're familiar with it because you are a WCW guy, when he spit the red mist out, I had me looking up all different mists and what they mean in wrestling lore. Of course, the green mist is something we're used to seeing with Great Muta and all that. Kabuki, but I looked up the different colors. So for everyone that doesn't know, the green one is commonly used. It's most common, and it's just to obstruct their vision. The red one, which Nakamura used last night, is quite often used, but it's said to burn the eyes. Gangrel used it as blood mist back in the day. There were some other Japanese stars using it. The black mist that we see that is used by House of Black is said to blind the opponents for several weeks. Tajiri used this on Nidia, but we also see it have the effect on the eyes of the different opponents of House of Black. The blue mist, which I've never seen, sends opponents to sleep. Yellow paralyzes the opponent. And then finally, purple causes momentary distraction or memory loss. So that was really cool. And I think the Japanese
love that, man.
Fantastic.
I love the mythology of the mist. I've heard Dave LaGreca, when I used to listen regularly to Busted Open Radio, they've done a couple episodes where they're breaking down what each missed, because Tommy Dreamer is on Busted Open, and Tommy Dreamer is a wrestling fanatic historian. And so I've heard them talk about, the various myths, and that they're not all created equal. That's the little stuff that makes me love pro wrestling. And for anyone else, it's just mist. It's like, no, dude, this is red mist compared to green mist compared to black. I love that shit. That's
the
what
fact that he got up after the red mist, because the red mist is more detrimental than the green mist. So it actually set him a lot, because this is burning his eyes. And yeah,
it's awesome.
You should have used the blue mist, bro. Would have put him to sleep.
Yeah. Go deeper. If you get into the little minutia of these things, it adds to, this isn't just his vision obstructed. It's like when we saw Pac take the black mist, dude had a bandage on his eye for like 3 weeks. It was great.
With that being said, let's get to hopefully one of the last times we're going to be talking about this in our big story, but I feel like it's not. Big story number 3.
Big story 3.
We have a reunion of all reunions potentially on deck for Chicago Survivor Series. CM Punk to WWE, we don't know. So he intends to return there. There's been a lot of talk of late regarding the possibility of him returning to the company. He obviously was there from 2005 to 2014, walked out after the Royal Rumble, and Meltzer addressed this from what he's heard from WWE and those close to Punk. And the quote was, regarding CM Punk, there's obviously tons of talk regarding him returning. He continues, there have been rumors that it is happening, confirmed, but those in WWE have only said it's no deal is completed. And those close to Punk have told us that it is his intention to return, and the two sides are in talks. The obvious landing spot, Chad, is hometown of Chicago, November 25th, Survivor Series. Meltzer did say it would make sense. People think it would make sense for him to return on the show. But you have the history, and that's being lost on people. I understand it's almost 10 years ago where he walked out of the company. He cut a scathing, shoot interview with Colt Cabana that had its own legs, but this is not just a guy who went off to do different things, wanted to retire. He's been heavily critical, even in recent years, of WWE. So for him to go back, I mean, it's interesting for himself, like perspective-wise, but it's also on WWE's side, like, there's a lot of guys that are still there that were there when he was here, when he was making waves.
I mean, it's funny. A guy who, like you said, has been hypercritical. I mean, go look at some of these quotes that he's said about WWE, buried everything about them. And it's funny that a guy who prides himself on paving his own path and fighting the man and doing all this, at the end of the day, even CM Punk, the voice of the voiceless, even CM Punk, it all comes down to money. He's going to take a payday. Maybe I'm an asshole, and maybe this is like me bitching about Led Zeppelin doing a Toyota commercial, Led Zeppelin music coming through. But when I see CM Punk flirting with going back to WWE, it screams sellout. Sellout. Any other person, anybody, there's not one wrestler that I would be critical of going to WWE. Of course you go to WWE. It's the big show. It's, you take the money, you go there. It's all the eyes. But he himself has set himself up to be called a sellout for me because of the way he's talked. I'll never go back there. He said that countless times. I mean, there were promos in AEW where he was burying a 2-for-1, buy one, get one on a 4-night extravaganza to MJF. You know, he has buried this company, and I get money talks, and you're going to say what you say in the company you're in, but, and it makes sense. I'm not criticizing the move per se of like how it makes sense and things like that. Of course it makes sense. Chicago Survivor Series. Why would WWE not want this guy? I get all the drama that comes with him, especially coming off the heels of this AEW firing. But I get why they would want him. The business side of it, it's a no-brainer. The match, you know, he could have a match they've been teasing with Seth Rollins. Like, he could have all of that, and fans will eat it up. You know, they'll just lap it up, man. But when it comes to it's CM Punk, the narrative he himself has put out in the press, it just, I think it makes him look like a sellout. Like it makes him look like he's going back to the place that he shit talked, and now he's gonna, with hat in hand, go back to Stanford and do what they tell him to do, because he's not going to have say in what he does. They're not in the business of that. And I don't know, man. I would much rather, I know you guys on Impact, Brace for Impact, you probably don't want to have that drama in that great locker room there, but it would at least be more compelling and interesting, and it wouldn't
and
have me
on his side,
yeah,
rehabilitated.
it would
It's
make
not
him
easy to
look
go there.
good. It would make him look good, where he could go anywhere. And I'm like, man, Punk really loves wrestling. But when he's going back to WWE after everything he said, it screams sellout to me.
So we can talk about all the references they've been making on TV. They are definitely dropping hands. Corey Graves did that on Raw last week. He said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making the world forget he existed. We have Seth Rollins dropping the best in the world stuff, and Cody Rhodes saying the same thing. But the update from Fightful as of recently, we had the WWE brass were talking about that if they asked him to come back, he would. That doesn't mean that if they have made an offer, that doesn't mean that it's confirmed. Because of all of this, the ball right now is in WWE's court for the logic they want to use. He's definitely interested. It doesn't mean that they are. And as of 2 weeks ago, no one in WWE had indicated they had been talking with Punk. There were feelers put back in September when everything sort of kind of hashed out a year ago. And one employee apparently advised Team Punk to reach out to Vince directly so the two could rehash the past drama and a very public departure in 2014. And we obviously know that Punk still has some heat for a number of comments he made for the past 10 years. And WWE would want to make sure that he wouldn't be able to pull the same shit that he pulled in AEW. And one top star was quoted that if Punk did try anything like he did in AEW, he would, quote, get his ass handed to him. A different top star, according to the Insider, doesn't believe Triple H would bring in the negativity that Punk brings, but noted that he has brought in controversial names in the past. And the general feeling is that Punk would have a lot of fence bending due prior to Chicago, especially with guys like Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, who have been very public about their dislike. So Roman Reigns that's the big dog. That's the guy. So if they don't like you, I have a feeling that they have a lot of say here. And we also have an AEW star told Fightful that before the brawl had happened, Punk would still verbalize how much he hates WWE, Triple H, and Vince personally. So as of right now, no one in creative have been informed that Punk is coming in. But those teases are intentional. I don't think, we were talking about it off air, I don't think the teases are a precursor that something's happening. As you said before we went on air, it is a barometer to gauge interest.
Yeah, I think there's two things that are really, really paramount in bringing him to WWE. And if these things weren't happening, I would be probably riding the fence a little bit more and skeptical of him coming back to this company, just on his personal feelings of it, and Triple H and Vince's personal feelings on him. I mean, the guy, they were embroiled in a lawsuit, and I think his beef went well above and beyond, the beefs of the past with the likes of like the Ultimate Warrior. I think there was a lot of bad blood there, but these two things make this a whole different game. And it's why I truly believe, I think he's coming to WWE. I think he will be at Survivor Series. And that's the fact that TKO runs this place now. Ari Emanuel is used to Punk. He has the relationship with UFC. He's very friendly with management of TKO. I think that plays a major part in it. And the bigger thing, we're in the middle of a WWE AEW tit for tat situation in the public eye. You go, we take Jade Cargill. We take Adam Copeland. We take CM Punk. Who is dictating the attention of the fans and the media? Right now, the attention's on AEW because, man, we've got this hot new item over here in Adam Copeland. And he's 49. He's pushing 50. Doesn't matter. He's a big deal. Look at the social media numbers. Fans are engaged. That's the new big hot topic. A couple weeks before that, it was Jade Cargill. What's a way to snatch back the attention and make everyone, at least in the casual sense, kind of forget about Adam Copeland going to AEW? It's, let's bring back the best in the world. Let's bring back CM Punk in Chicago. It'll be all that everyone's talking about. So I think he's coming, man. I really do. I think all of these all of these little comments from Corey Graves on weekly TV, dropping these little sayings and calls that are associated with CM Punk. I think all of that right now is kind of upper management gauging the temperature of the room, seeing how fans are reacting to those comments on social media, seeing if there's a real groundswell of support to bring him back from a fan perspective. And obviously the fans are lapping that shit up on social media. So I think we're going to see him in Chicago at Survivor Series. I really do. And I think it's probably going to build into a Seth Rollins match, whether it be the Royal Rumble or what. Funny thing is, though, he's not going to main event Mania. He's not. The one thing that eluded him when he left the company, this guy, at best, he'll main event a night one on a buy one get one 2-night extravaganza, possibly, but he's not getting that Roman Reigns main event spot. I just don't see it.
Nor should he. And I think Seth Rollins should go over in that program. That should be signed and sealed and delivered, that Seth Rollins needs to be the one that's showcased over a Punk who's not a company guy. Seth Rollins has been through and through their guy. He better not come in and make Seth Rollins look lesser than, because that'd piss off a lot of long-term fans.
100%. Question for you, Ace. Do you think this ends in a good way or a bad way? If they bring him back, do you think Punk is going to Punk eventually? Like, he'll come in, he'll be happy and say all the right things like he did in AEW, but do you think, a zebra always shows his stripes? Do you think that's going to happen eventually, or do you think they'll keep it locked up in WWE?
There will be issues down the line somewhere. I don't see this ending in a copacetic way. His comfortability is through chaos, and I think he's always going to find a way to rattle the cage of everybody, and that's just who he is. I don't think it will have the same effect, because I think WWE is more equipped to handle that type of stuff and pluck him out and throw him out to sea. I think Tony Khan was too invested in the fandom and in what he was doing for a younger company. WWE has no scruples about just tossing him out, and they don't need him. And I think Punk needs them. And I think the leverage has completely changed.
I'm with you. I think he will show his true colors. There will be issues. And as soon as those issues arise, he'll be booted. They won't put up with it. They don't need him. They're a machine. But I think if you think this is all going to end in sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops, and he gets his WWE Hall of Fame induction and rides happily off into the sunset, I just don't see that happening. There will be something happen. It always does.
He just continues to cosplay Bret Hart. This is, what Bret Hart did. Bret Hart put his difference aside and went back, and maybe that's the roadmap he's using, but maybe he'll be wearing jorts in a WrestleMania main event. We'll see. All right, let's get to quick hitters. Quick hitters. All right, so for the first story in Quick Hitters, the AEW World Championship match from Full Gear is set. MJF will defend his championship against Jay White following the events that took place on 2 weeks ago's Dynamite. And the Guns and Juice Robinson at first came into the ring, called out MJF, accusing him of being behind the attack. We have some story here, man, that's being crossed over into the Adam Cole stuff. The other thing is, I love the fact that we have a AEW World Championship match this far out. More than a month to go with Full Gear. We're going to have a lot of time to build this.
I love that they announced this soon. It just means every time they're on our weekly TV, whatever segment, it's building to this match. The cliffhanger with the devil mask, jumping Jay White, one of the great cliffhanger endings in Dynamite history. I think that's the type of stuff we live for. It gets you wondering, gets you guessing. I wish they would have brought that back. I want to see the guy in the devil mask again. Don't make that a one-off. I want to see another attack. Get us really thinking about who this guy is, who these masked people are. I think this is great, man. What do you think about just the match itself with MJF and Jay White and where we could go with this?
I'm excited for it. I think Jay White is a top guy, and I think if ever anyone's been watching New Japan Pro Wrestling, he's carried that company in Kenny Omega's absence when he left. There's been some criticism on Jay White's promo, and I want to just push back on for people. I think Jay White is having to adjust to a North American company, because if you look at Jay White as a guy, he's been one of those wrestlers that's been in the Japanese eye of the storm, and he's been cutting promos, but he's had to emphasize and use the yelling and very clear wording, even repeating himself, because there's a language barrier. I think over time he's going to learn a little bit of the American promo and get that under his legs. But comparing him to MJF, it's a tough sell right here. I think that's also why he's being, I don't think he had a bad promo, but I think people were like, oh, he's very rhythmic. He's very over the top. It's because of the fact he has to, for translation, he has to be able to cut these promos in New Japan and be felt of what he's saying. So
I like Jay White's promos. I mean, dude, stack anyone against MJF and you've got a tough road to hoe. You know, he's one of the best in the business, if not
100%.
the best when you get on a mic. But I'm enjoying I like Jay White's way. I like his rhythmic nature of his. You want to talk about rhythmic promos? Look at Cody Rhodes. And
100%.
I like Cody Rhodes promos, but he's got a very rhythmic, they all kind of flow the same. His cadence is very much the same. I'm enjoying Jay White's cadence. What I love is, man, when you go back and look at this run of MJF, which some people were critical of, especially Fed Brain people, they were critical of MJF's title run. Look at the matchups and the stories he's had in this run. I mean, that epic Danielson match. There's just the Adam Cole match. There's so many things that are going to be looked back at with this current run from MJF as very special. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if MJF wins at Full Gear, I'm pretty sure he becomes the longest reigning AEW champion. He's going to break Kenny Omega's run because he won that title last year at Full Gear.
Yeah, it's crazy. It feels like he just won the title, but that also is emphasis on he's been in a lot of good programs and they've done a good job of keeping him interesting this whole time. And he was a heel. Now he's a face and all good stuff. I'm looking forward to this feud. I don't think Jay White wins the title, but this is a good opportunity for him to show the company he could be the guy. So I'm very curious where it goes. We also had the Art of War games happening in Atlantic City, New Jersey for GCW. And we had some good matches here. Most notably, the two main events, GCW World Championship. Blake Christian defeated Jimmy Lloyd to retain the GCW title. And then we had the Art of War Games match. Team GCW, Ciclope, John Wayne Murdoch, Miedo Extremo, Nick Gage, and Rina Yamashita defeated Team Freedoms, Jun Kasai, Hashi Takeda, Takashi Sasaki, Toru Segura, and Violento Jack. So a good card here. GCW has been under the radar a bit here, but make sure you check them out. And also shout out to Alec Price being on GCW programming for the opening match. He's awesome. So this was a good watch. As far as GCW, there isn't as many eyes on them right now because of the wrestling world. There's been a lot going on this summer and then early fall. So GCW has been still grinding, putting out really awesome events on Fight TV and, check them out.
Yeah, they're constantly putting on good events. They've kind of cooled off from a public perception type of angle, but I just got to shout out Charles Mason defeating Richard Holiday. That was another good match. Joey Janela in the 4-way match with Jack Cartwell, Jordan Oliver, and Masha Slamovich. They're still putting on good stuff. I think the Matt Cardona effect is kind of lightened a little bit, and they're kind of falling back into that super indie spot because at one point a lot of people were saying, hey man, they're stepping up to be the ECW of this era. But continuing, always a good fun show, and the Art of War is one of their must-see events of the year.
So if you were watching Fastlane and missed AEW Collision, Ricky Starks and Big Bill are the new AEW Tag Team Champions. So they defeated FTR in the open of Saturday's Collision. And really the story of this match was Big Bill chokeslammed Cash Wheeler through a table, and then he chokeslammed Dax Harwood multiple times. So FTR puts a punctuation on this 180-day reign. They defeat the Guns back on April 5th. I was live in the building at UBS. They'd recently successfully defended the tag titles against the Bucks at All In, and then they also set the stage potentially for having a rematch for Bucks FTR 4, but they pulled the plug. So there's been conversations about, I know there was a cryptic Dax Harwood tweet that he did overcorrect and say that I always say top guys out. There's nothing, we're here to be home. There's also a rumor and innuendo about Cash Wheeler possibly facing some level of punishment in like the judicial system for what happened with the gun thing. Maybe that has something to do with here, or they want to free up FTR to work with Edge. Who knows? But at this point, Ricky Starks and Big Bill, congrats to them for being the AEW Tag Champs.
I think they're freeing them up to do a run with Edge. I think all those guys want to work together. I think it's Tony kind of pushing for that. It doesn't feel like this was planned. I don't think this was the end game of this run with FTR, but if it frees them up to go into an angle they want to work with their longtime friend, And man, the way they're building Big Bill, I'm enjoying it, dude. I think Will Morrissey is super talented, and he's got his shit together since everything he went through. And Starks, we'll see. I mean, it's not the traditional tag team that we love. You know, it's essentially probably two singles guys who's kind of been put together in recent weeks, but they've been working well together. And you're throwing a little bit of emphasis on two guys that I think desperately need it, and I'm for it. I want to see where it goes.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels Diesel vibes to me. Like it's
100%
two dudes with attitudes. If it feels that way, but curious to see where it goes, and it's awesome to see Ricky Starks holding a championship and Big Bill. This is his first time holding, tag gold. Believe it or not, like
that's
he wasn't.
That's a lot of respect right there, dude. And for FTR to be like, we want to drop it to these guys, or if it was Tony saying, hey, I'm going to have you drop it to these guys. The fact that everyone was in on this and they made them look devastating and strong in this kind of shocking upset. Sometimes I love stuff like this because, dude, this is a thing that gets fans knowing like, holy shit, we could miss something big on Collision. Big things happen there. I thought from a booking perspective, from a pushing talent perspective, and from a question mark, what's going on with FTR perspective, I think it's all good.
So we also had Rhea Ripley and Paul Heyman teasing a huge program between Judgment Day and Bloodline. So this backstage segment where eventually ended on SmackDown with this, they teamed up together. So it seems like there's going to be at the very least a crossover between both. So Rhea Ripley was bullying Paul Heyman in the back, where she said that he needed to acknowledge him, and also talked about, that Paul Heyman would acknowledge her and that Judgment Day and Bloodline were going to have some problems if you don't. And then she then authorized Paulie to make his phone call. This was a good optic to create Rhea Ripley feeling like she's on the same level as Roman Reigns, which was very, very interesting. She became the de facto leader of Judgment Day. If she wasn't already, this made her feel that way.
Yeah, I know they've said, Judgment Day has no leaders. Rhea's leading that stable, let's be honest. And your two biggest stables possibly having a feud. Hey, Survivor Series is right around the corner. You could do a War Games type situation, maybe. I don't know if it happens that soon, but it would be fun to watch these two clash.
So Adam Cole provided an injury update during his Twitch stream on Thursday. We do know he broke his ankle during the run-in on AEW Dynamite Grand Slam back on September 20th. So he's going to need 2 surgeries with 8 screws and a plate being inserted in his ankle. So the timeline of him coming back is unclear, but he's still been included on AEW programming. Audio issues be damned. He's been on our screen, but I think this is a setback for sure. But, similar to when Stone Cold broke his neck, you can make situations like this almost enhance the character.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They need to handle this, not like obviously with his concussion, he was just off our TVs, which that's a different element altogether. I think you have to handle Adam Cole, even if it's just the pre-tapes like we got last Wednesday. You got to keep him in our consciousness, especially with him and MJF and their attachment as champions and all of that. Just a bump in the road, man. All the best to Adam Cole. It's a shame because the dude was really on a roll, and I think the roll continues. I think they'll find interesting ways to keep him involved.
So this Friday evening, we also had an update from Kyle O'Reilly about his recovery from the neck fusion surgery, which took place almost a year ago today. He wrote that following the surgery, he was unable to move his right arm, with doctors saying he was suffering from C5 palsy. He said now he's undergone treatment. He's able to move his arm, and they used a newbie device. He was able to continue to get it within a month. And he ended the post by saying that in the last 12 months, it felt like, quote, walking in a desert looking for an oasis, but he can see the oasis now, but it's no longer a mirage. So you can go back and read the post for his Instagram. He's pretty honest about what was going on with him. And this is scary, dude, because it's outside of just like coming back to the ring. About not being able to use your right arm is scary for everyday life.
Yeah, I'm worried for the guy, honestly. He's been dealing with a lot. He's a hard-hitting guy. I not to be negative about it, but I wonder if we'll ever see Kyle the way we've seen him in the past. I think he's back to his ROH days, man. Hard-hitting guy.
Yeah.
It's caught up with him. I hope everything comes back and he's back the way we want him to be, but all the best to Kyle O'Reilly.
So we also have note from the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Dragon Lee is now officially a main roster talent based on how well he did with Dominic Mysterio during NXT, and backstage officials bumped him up. So now he's going to be on the main roster because of how well he did. Used his time in the sun on NXT and on Raw to emphasize, and he jumped the line. Now he's on the main roster.
Dragon Lee's a great talent. Good pickup. I always get nervous with luchadors on the main roster, man. They're always booked the same way. Unless you're Rey Mysterio, it's really hard to crack through that glass ceiling. So we'll see how it goes.
Julia Hart and Lee Johnson reportedly set for some time off from AEW and ROH in the near future. So Fightful Select reported that they are engaged. They'll be away from the company as they celebrate their upcoming wedding and honeymoon. So just keep that in mind with Julia Hart, who was put on, this big platform with the TBS Championship. Lee Johnson, not so much, but he was involved in ROH TV. But that's why they're off our TV right now. Just keep that in mind.
I love that Tony, when big life things happen for his roster, he allows them to take time off and he doesn't really push back. This is something Vince probably would not have done, especially the way they pushed Julia Hart. And in this situation, it is kind of unfortunate. You take time off right when she was getting hot, man.
She was, yeah.
She was on a little bit of a run, and now to take a step away, you're going to have to come back and get back in the groove. But congratulations to them and all the best.
We also got a vignette on Friday's Rampage. Things do happen on Rampage, featuring Danhausen singing his catchphrase, "Very nice, very evil." He said he's coming back soon. The vignette ended with the phrase, "Love that Danhausen." So we know he's been out of action with a torn pectoral muscle since Revolution pay-per-view back in March. Obviously was teaming with Orange Cassidy on the show and all that. So we haven't seen a lot of Danhausen active. We know he moves merch. We know that he has a lot to give charisma-wise. So it's cool to see that he's coming back and being featured, maybe on Rampage.
I would love it if Rampage was his home. You need stuff like that. You need guy, because he has a huge hardcore following. If people knew, hey, Rampage is the Danhausen show, and they put him not just in these kind of funny haha goofball segments, like let's get him in the ring. Let's get him telling a story on Rampage, and I think fans will tune in for it.
So we also have Jimmy Jacobs coming out talking about how he came into AEW, and he obviously was Impact Creative earlier in the year, and then he joined AEW as a producer, creative team member back in June. He was talking on the AEW Unrestricted podcast, saying that he was hired from the company because Bryan Danielson wanted someone in the chaos. So he was handpicked from Bryan Danielson. And most notably, if you guys remember, he was fired from the WWE creative team back in 2015 because he was appearing on the selfie with the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, Marty Scurll on Instagram as the Bullet Club members were staging an invasion on Raw during BTE. But Jimmy Jacobs, longtime lifer, he's a guy who is a great mind. He was credit to a lot of the stuff going on Impact. And I think you can see his fingertips are all over the AEW product as of now.
Yeah, he was responsible during WWE for the list.
Yep.
Jericho's the list. Guy's got his hands in a lot of big things from the past. And you would be a fool to think that since he's came here, that story has upped in AEW. And Tony, I think, is listening to his guys a lot more. And when you're getting the credit of Danielson bringing you in, Tony, we know how Tony feels about Bryan Danielson and his ideas of the business. I think he's got a lot of respect. And like you said, I think you see his fingerprints all over AEW's current product.
So we also have Mariah May is expected to join AEW. The 25-year-old finished up with Stardom last weekend. Then she teased that, quote, she had a flight to catch on social media, which started these rumors that she could appear at AEW Wrestle Dream. While May wasn't on the show, it's believed that she's eventually coming to AEW, and we saw what she's able to do in Japan. So following her loss to Hannon on the final night of the five-star Grand Prix, May was in the ring, told the Yokohama crowd that it was her last match in Japan for good. However, she previously told Stardom she would return eventually. So regarding May being involved in a group with Tony Storm, obviously Tony Storm's character is taking a weird turn that doesn't really fit with Mariah May's doing. Maybe they decide to bring Mariah May into that fold with something with Timeless Storm,
her
the portrait of a star.
She's going to be her co-star.
It'd be fantastic. So Mariah May, though, it's going to be a great addition to the AEW women's roster.
She's super talented. Stardom, one of the hot free agents, honestly. Like one of the Julia and her, I think, are like
right,
probably
1A, 1B. Yep.
Yeah, 1A, 1B. Mariah May looks like $1 million. Her and Tony doing some sort of co-star star.
That would be cool.
It would be really cool. I really hope all these rumors are true because Mariah May would be a huge pickup for AEW's women's division.
So we also got an update on Bandito's injury. So according to the newsletter, Bandito is nearly fully cleared and will be ready for in-ring action. Bandito obviously hurt his wrist in June. kept him out of action for the rest of the summer. He's missed all the big events, All In, All Out, Wrestle Dream, and we know that he had a falling out with AAA, and the AAA head booker Conan noted that Bandito and Rush had essentially burned their bridge because he's prioritized AEW. Tony Khan's high on him. I think he's going to be featured in a big way where, he's going to be featured once he's back, but he's definitely been missed.
Yeah, I hope they really put a rocket on this guy, at least in story perspective, because Bandito, I'm super high on him. Like Swerve, like the Guns back, a couple years ago. I think Bandito is a star in the making. I want him to heat up LFI, man. Put Bandito in LFI with Rush and those guys and have them clash with what's the
Dark Order, like anything like that.
Somebody, let's go. I'm all for it.
So our final story in quick hitters, Tessa Blanchard's getting an opportunity with CMLL Grand Prix. So she's going to be making her debut, and CML confirmed that she's going to be a part of Team World in the Grand Prix event on October 27th. And we have the full teams revealed for the women's CMLL Grand Prix include Tessa Blanchard teaming with Johnny Robbie, Sumi Sakai, Makoto, May Saruga, Stephanie Vagger, La Catalina, and Zeusis. So they will face Team Mexico's Reina Isis, Marcela, Luvia, Jarchita, Doretta, Skady, Hira, and Saintly. So easy for me to say, pal, but we get Tessa Blanchard on a big stage here.
Yeah, she's trying to make her way, man. She's trying to right wrongs. Such a talented performer. I just want to see her get back. Let's see some redemption, man. Let's forgive and forget and let someone ply their trade. She's just so good, man. If she was in a major company right now, she'd be one of the top women in the world. But, she had all that controversy that's really soured her on the major promotions. But I hope she finds a way. I hope they allow her a path to kind of get some redemption, man, and right those wrongs.
And international dates are the way to kind of rehabilitate your name. This is a pretty big stage for her. This is the biggest stage she's been on since kind of having the departure from Impact and not got the opportunity in WWE, all that stuff because of what happened outside of the ring. But let's get to Dave's raves and talk about his match of the week and performer of the week.
Dave raves.
So clearly his match of the week was Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. October 1st, Seattle Wrestle Dream. He said this was a classic style match, and he thinks it will be one of the most remembered matches of this era by people in 20 years. He also gave it 5.5 stars. So your thoughts on this quickly, Chad?
I mean, it's exactly what I expected Dave to pick, and say what you want about 5 stars. It's his opinion, guys. It's not like he is the definitive end all be all of what wrestling is and should be. It's just, he has a history of these ratings and people look at the ratings, and 5.5 stars, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever you want to give it. That match was awesome. It felt special. It felt big, and it did feel historical. So I'm with Dave. I thought it was it wasn't my favorite match of the night. Like, I liked Swerve and Hangman better, but from a historical standpoint, I could see why Zack Sabre and Danielson is getting the love.
His performer of the week was Dragunov, and he just talked about how he was sensational, talked about how this is probably the best match in WWE this year, outside of Gunther and Gable and maybe the triple threat match they had. But as far as work rate goes, he gave this 4 3/4. Talk about how amazing this was, and he's very complimentary. So if you have not watched NXT No Mercy, go ahead and check out Dragunov versus Carmelo Hayes. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Dragunov's just crushing it, man. One of the best in the business right now.
With that being said, let's get to the week ahead and preview the week ahead in wrestling.
The week ahead.
All right, so we're not going to preview AEW Dynamite and NXT, obviously, because we did that. Go back to big story number 1. But let's start with Raw tonight. NXT Women's Championship on the line. Becky Lynch is going to defend against Tegan Nox. We get a Viking Rules match, Kofi Kingston versus Ivar, and Nia Jax versus Raquel Rodriguez. They're going to try to run back that NXT match because Becky Lynch couldn't compete last week against Tegan Nox.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, guys, this is what's announced. I know last week we announced matches, and who would have thought they changed a lot of those matches last minute. So you never know what you're going to get on Raw, but this is what's announced.
On Thursday, we have Impact on Access. This is the third part of the Mid-South Mayhem tapings. Eddie Edwards versus Frank Kazarian in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Impact Tag Team Championship. The Rascals, Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz defending against Sami Callihan and Rich Swann. Winner of that goes on to Bound for Glory to take on ABC. And then we get Jake Something versus Dirty Dango versus Jordan Grace for Champagne Singh versus Eric Young for a number 1 and number 20 spot in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match at Bound for Glory. So some good stuff here. Mid-South Mayhem got 3-part taping, so we have a lot of stuff to break down there. So make sure you guys tune in to Brace for Impact right here in Turnbuckle Tavern.
Yeah, man, that Bound for Glory, we're getting the Rascals and ABC. What a match that's going to be for Bound for Glory.
Hell yeah. And on SmackDown, we get the return of Roman Reigns for the first time since, I believe, August, right? Like, that's how long it's been.
Been a while.
Special appearance by Triple H, and we get Pretty Deadly versus the Brawling Brutes. So this is going to be Friday on SmackDown.
Nice.
And on AEW Collision this Saturday, the TNT Championship will be on the line. Christian Cage is defending against either Swerve Strickland or Bryan Danielson. You have to watch on Tuesday to find out who's going to be taking on Christian Cage.
That's a huge match. It's a huge match.
Any chance that Christian drops that title to Swerve or Bryan Danielson?
I mean, possibly, if they feel like Swerve needs a title, and you could essentially you don't need that TNT title in this Edge feud or Adam Copeland feud, but I like it being on Christian. I hope he wins, but if they put it on Swerve, I wouldn't be mad at it.
It'd be very, very cool. I think we both can agree that Swerve's beating Bryan Danielson. I know that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Well, that's all we got for you guys. We made it under 2 hours, but let's get some shilling in, talk about all the spooky season, Broken VCR, everything else coming on the Turnbuckle Tavern.
Yeah, Broken VCR, we're in the middle of our double stuffed October, guys. If you like movies, especially right now, if you like horror movies, we're crushing it. We're putting out a bunch of fun stuff. We've talked tons of deep cut movies, but this last week we did our first vampire film of the season in Near Dark. And this Tuesday, we're going to be talking Roman Polanski's The Fearless Vampire Killer. So we have a run of vampire films before we end up our double stuff October on Tuesday, Halloween Day. So if you guys like movies or know people that like movies, put us in your ear holes. Let us talk to you, as LA Knight would say.
Let me talk to you. Yeah. All right. So you guys can also check out Thursday Brace for Impact, covering the 3rd part, building up Bound for Glory, and also the Mid-South Mayhem tapings. But Friday, we'll be covering the first of main event number 1, which is Andre vs. Hogan for the championship, or Ted DiBiase and the twin refs and all that. And also the other 2 Saturday night's main events. We changed the structure a little bit because due to the Mandela effect, like you forgot that was the main event. It took place on Friday, not Saturday. It is still the same vehicle. So we're adding it to our list. February 1988. Our 3 episodes are in 1988. Bellcaster and I are going to be returning to you guys on Friday night, but also Saturday morning if you listen on audio. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you for the support.
Yeah, you guys are crushing it. And again, for any support, any of the shows, Shot of Nostalgia, Raw Down, Fig Night, all of the shows we got going on over here, the debate, we got Hal Haney was on today. So guys, go check out the great artist Hal Haney on the debate this week. But you can find all of this stuff at theturnbuckletavern.com, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. That's the hub, man. It gives you everything we got going on. We churn out the pro wrestling content for you guys. Hope you enjoy it. Tell a friend, write a review, follow, subscribe, do all that good stuff. But until next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from the pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.